Okay, right, we are starting now. Well, respected professionals, STEAM session leader and keynote speaker, Ms. Elky Kellner, presenters, Ms. Jasmine Offner, Ms. Tatiana Munoz, Bernice, sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly, Ms. Safalta Kumari and Ms. Angel Gonzalez Luna, and our valued attendees. Greetings to you all. Today is Tuesday, March 15, 2022. And on behalf of ICOM Austria and ICOM Family Forum, it's an honor to welcome you all in this virtual platform of IVCOM. My name is Meena Lama. I'm a member of ICOM Nepal and moderator for this session. So before we begin, except for the presenters and our session leaders, well, I would like to request all the attendees to mute their microphones. Well, today's session is being recorded and the link will be made accessible to our messenger group of ICOM Family Forum after we finish the session. If you have any questions for the presenters, please use the chat feature to submit your queries. And well, due to time limitation, we won't be taking questions in person. However, if we finish our session before scheduled time, then we will be happy to welcome you all to interact with our speakers. Well, each presenters will have a total of 20 minutes for the presentation. Well, with this brief request, let me commence today's session with the introduction of our honorable session leader and keynote speaker, Ms. Elky Kellner. Well, she is the Managing Director of ICOM Austria National Committee, and she was the board member of Blue Shield Austria in 2014 and a board member of ICOM Europe in 2019. Well, without further delay, let me welcome Ms. Elky Kellner for her presentation. Welcome, ma'am.
Hello, everybody. First of all, let me thank you for this kind invitation. I think the ICOM Family Forum is a really great thing to participate in, and I'm very honored to joining you today. I would like to thank Meena Lama for the kind introduction and organizing and moderating this event, and of course, all participating lecturers. I especially want to thank Mr. Muhammad Akhtar Shafet for the wonderful initiative of the ICOM family, and I'm very honored to present today, and I will start sharing my presentation now. Just a second. I will put it up here. So there we go. ICOM Austria is one of the bigger national committees of ICOM, and it's our goal to promote public awareness of the important role of museums in our society and our mission to save cultural heritage and support international know-how transfer. So events like this today are really important to us. As our current president of ICOM International, Alberto Galandini, has pointed out, museums are innovators in promoting sustainable change to respond to social, economic, and environmental challenges of our times. Our current president now is Bettina Leidl. She is also the director of the Museums Quartier in Vienna, and she has put reaching the UN sustainability goals on the top of our agenda here on ICOM Austria. I also want to present to you Dr. Danielle Sperer. She is our current vice president here in Austria and also the director of the Jewish Museum. She is a candidate for the next ICOM executive board. The election will take place in Prague this summer, and she will also support putting the UN sustainability goals on the front page of ICOM's agenda internationally. So what did we do? Against the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic and its massive impact on the cultural sector, the supporting role of museums in shaping and developing our society became particularly evident. But how can their contribution to a sustainable social transformation be presented and communicated in a broadly and effective way? Therefore, ICOM Austria has initiated the project 17 Museums, 17 SDGs, Goals for Sustainable Development. This initiative is operated in cooperation with our Federal Ministry of Arts, Culture and Civil Service and Sport. This was a very important support from the ministry who also financed this project. to give it on a big scale in our country and to push this information forward. The SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, adopted by the United Nations in 2015, provide an ideal framework. These 70 goals are an agenda for the sustainable transformation of our society, and the goal is for 2030 on an economic, social, and ecological level support change. They are a universal call to action to end poverty, to protect the planet, and involve the lives and prospects of everyone everywhere. But not everybody knows the SDGs until now. So our goal was to broaden public awareness and also, of course, the awareness in museums. So ICOM Austria nominated 17 museums to develop concrete measures and activities for each of the 17 SDGs as a contribution to the achievement of these goals, and thus to act as practice examples and role models for the museum community in Austria. The selection process was taken care of to ensure a broad range from small to medium sized to large museums all across the federal states of Austria. And the SDGs were assigned by a kickoff event on February last year under the auspices of the ministry. Here you see a picture from the official start of the project, where we had a lottery of the SDGs that were then assigned to each museum by chance. So the project was running all year from 2021. And since then, since February last year, there was a process of workshops to start with the projects to help the museums to develop and implement their respective strategies, measures, and activities. So you see the participating museums, and every museum had a goal, SDG goal to work with. An ongoing communication campaign in social media and on-site in the museum made the project and the commitment visible to the outside world, to the media. In addition, from the end of August to mid-September, we had a period of 17 weeks where each museum had 1 week where they set the focus on their commitment, on their activities to contribute to the SDGs. Lots of events were taking place, social media postings especially. Also, we had discussions, we had exhibitions, so all different kinds of projects in the respective museums. So the 17 museums, 17 SDGs is a project that aims to show that museums take the SDGs seriously and make concrete contribution to achieve them. It aims to raise awareness and visibility, both internally to all the staff and externally, like visitors, stakeholders. It aims to make the international community's vision of a good future accessible to as many people as possible, including the cultural sector, of course. After all, museums and art institutions are an important social player with great impact. So with the project 17 SDGs, 17 museums is making a concrete contribution to the implementation of the SDGs. And we were able to show a presentation of the first projects during our Austrian Museum Day last year in October in Graz. We had a very good keynote speaker there, and that was also another part of developing public awareness. Of course, the topic of sustainability is a big one in ICOM itself. We have the working group of sustainability that is developing an action plan for the international museum community. So this goes hand in hand, and it's very important to keep working together. Museums are particularly responsible, of course, to safeguard their collections. So we were terrified to hear the news about severe flooding in Germany, tornadoes, heavy thunderstorms in Czechia last year that damaged museums and collections. That was actually for all the past years our main focus natural and man-made hazards, climate disasters, flooding, things like that were in our main focus. And these mostly natural disasters are putting heritage, cultural heritage under pressure, are threatening heritage sites, and are severe catastrophes and challenges for conservation. And it's important to have an innovative approach to safeguarding and to handle those extreme climate conditions. I just want to show you an European project called Strength, together with partners from Italy, from Czechia, Hungary, Slovenia, Germany, Croatia, and Austria, in order to monitor climate and see what heritage sites might endanger and what measures should be taken, and work together on an international scale, which is quite important, I think. In Austria, we developed an emergency plaque for evacuation to clearly and coherently mark objects in storages that should be saved first in case of emergency, making it easier for blue light organizations like fire brigade, armed forces, police forces, find them in an emergency. We also had practical exercises together with the armed forces, police forces, and the Danube University in Krems to perform an evacuation exercise at the Stift Melk in Lower Austria, to practice this cooperation and interaction of the different partners in this case, a natural disaster, in order to save the invaluable objects of heritage. Of course, Austria is also committed in raising public awareness for the presentation and preservation of our common cultural heritage internationally. With the ICOM Palmyra talks, we were highlighting the importance of safeguarding heritage and fighting illicit trafficking, of course, the illegal trade of cultural artifacts. Austrian museums like the Kunsthistorisches Museum of Vienna also serve as safe haven for illicitly traded objects that were confiscated by the police and are waiting to be given back to the international partners, museums, states, or whomever those objects belong to. Little did we know that the possible dangers here in Europe not only come from natural disasters or crime, but from a full-scale war against the European country. Little did we know that a long and stable period of peace in Europe would end so abruptly. Little did we know that our museum colleagues' lives would be threatened, that heritage would be in severe danger of destruction. Little did we know that evacuation exercises in case of armed conflict would come reality so fast, and crimes against the Hague Conventions would be committed in open force. As ICOM representatives, we are expressing our unwavering support to Ukraine and solidarity with the Ukrainian people. We would like to extend our heartfelt wishes of courage and strength to all the members of the Ukrainian ICOM, all the Ukrainian museum professionals, and of course, all citizens of Ukraine, many of whom are fleeing their country at the moment, many of whom are coming to the neighboring countries and to Austria as well. Museums are the guardians of history, and as such, show examples from the dark times of our history, so that it does not have to be repeated. Our core values of freedom and democracy. Russia, with the invasion to Ukraine, is directly attacking and trampling on those values. We stand firmly behind the people of Ukraine. We are ready to offer support to our colleagues in the Ukrainian museums and to protect their cultural heritage, their identity and freedom. So I hope many measures can be taken, and we hope people can be saved. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Elky, for the presentation. And also thank you very much for officially sharing about the 17 SDG and a 17 museum project of ICOM Austria. Well, we wish you luck for the success. All right. So if any of our attendees have any questions for Ms. Elky, then please add them to our chat box, and we will read them during our question and answer session. Let us welcome our next presenter, Ms. Jasmine Offner. She is the coordinator of Austrian Seal of Quality for Museums and a member of ICOM Austria. Hello, Ms. Jasmine, you are welcome.
Hello, yes, thank you so much for your introduction. I'm delighted to speak here. Thank you so much also for inviting me. I would like to introduce you today to the Austrian Seal of Quality for Museums and speak about what is that exactly, how does it work, what are we doing? And so I'm going to share now my presentation with you. I am coordinating the field office here in Vienna. So now I'm currently speaking from my home office from Vienna to you. It's quite interesting and very exciting to connect with all of you over the world. So I'm really happy to speak with you here today. The Seal of Quality is operated by two associations. First of all, ICOM Austria, which was the association who also established the Seal of Quality, and later the Association of Museums of Austria, Museumsbund Österreich, was also included as operator. And we're also supported by the Federal Ministry of Art and Culture, or shortly Austrian Cultural Ministry. Yes, and so how was the seal established and what exactly does it mean to be awarded with the Seal of Quality? Let's start right into it. So I have here a map of Austria, that's our country, and we have 9 federal states, and Vienna is at right on the map, and the seal was founded in 2002 by ICOM Austria, as already said, because the term museum still is open for use to everyone and has to be protected, especially since not every collection or displays of certain collections can be referred to as museums. There are certain guidelines and standards that must be adhered to, and not least the well-known ICOM Code of Ethics. So ICOM Austria and later the Museum Association Austria joined forces and act now as general operators of the Austrian Seal of Quality for Museums, and I am coordinating with the museums, and my task is to inform them about application, for example, and really act as a communicator and trying to get this network started and yeah, develop it further. So today, nearly 300 museums in total of all 9 federal states of Austria carry the Seal of Quality. And here's also a brief introduction to 9 museums from the respective federal provinces. I will share also with you the names now of the museums. I have here, for example, in Burgenland, the Village Museum of Mönchhof. It's a large regional open-air museum that provides an insight into everyday village life and farm life. In Carinthia, we have the Galltaler Heimatmuseum. It's a local history museum and is dealing with all the artworks, furniture of the culture of the specific local area here. We have in Lower Austria the Museum St. Peter and Speyer. This is a delighted city museum dedicated to the 800-year-old history of the city. In Upper Austria, for example, I wanted to show you a very special thematic museum. It's called Hirschbacher Farmers Furniture. And shows just regional specialty, magnificently decorated and painted cultural artifacts from the region, especially the furniture. In Salzburg, we have a mining and the Gothic museum in Leogang, with Gothic works of art and the mining industry, which celebrated its heyday in the Middle Ages. From Styria, there is a local history and natural museum in Mariazell, with multidisciplinary. It's a multidisciplinary museum with the focus of its history collection, natural history collection, as you can see in the image. In Tyrol, there is the Tyrolean Folk Art Museum, for example, which deals with also local traditions. So you can see we have a lot of really local history museums who are really preserving their cultural, so they're really aware of their cultural heritage and trying to preserve and also communicate this with the local people and also for the tourists in many different languages. The two last cities or federal states, sorry, I would like to introduce you to two museums in Vorarlberg. We have a Jewish museum in Hohenems, in the Villa Heimann Rosenthal. It tells the story of the local Jewish community and the victims during the National Socialist era in the Second World War. And last museum I wanted to show you in Vienna is the Kunsthaus Wien, Museum Hundertwasser. It was also the first green museum in Austria, and the director was before Bettina Leidl, who was introduced by Elky Kellner, the president of ICOM Austria. And she really tried to focus on the environmental goals of museums. So this is one of the leading museums on green architecture and also on green ecological standards in museums. And now, who is awarding this seal of quality? We are acting with the associations, as I said, ICOM Austria and the Austrian Museum Association. You can see in the right image, again, Bettina Leidl in the center, the president of ICOM. On the left, we have the chairman of our jury, Heimo Keindl, and the president also of the Museum Association Austria, Wolfgang Muchic, on the right. And on the left picture, you can see 6 jury members. They are all museum directors or managing directors of national unions who are dealing with museum goals or museum associations all over Austria. So all the federal states come together in this jury, or we at least try to, yeah. So these are this is the jury who is awarding the seal. They consist, they work very closely at the museum size, and they look very closely also to the local sphere of influence, taking into account how the museum is institutionally constituted. The exact same conditions cannot apply to small volunteer-run museums as to large state-funded institutions. We are aware of that, and this is all taken into account in the evaluation process and assessed as fairly as possible according to the size of the museums, and also their space of how many people they reach and the local awareness of the museum. As museum work is always an ongoing process and requires constant development, the quality seal has to be renewed every 5 years. The jury is evaluating if the applying museum is going to be extended every 5 years, and so enables to reflect on the developments of the institution in the past period. The chairman of the jury, you already, I already introduced him, is also really a leading force and trying to renew the whole marketing concept. Together with me, we worked on a new criteria catalog and started to really make the process of the evaluation more transparent. And this is our most important goal, to not create any fear or, oh my God, how can I get this seal? We want to break this. We want to get involved with the museums, and are really trying also to build small events, online events, to communicate, to share problems, ideas and thoughts, and connect with the smaller museums, try to bring the smaller museums closer to the larger museums, and working on a new workshop format also to increase the network activity. We have 297 museums currently who are carrying the Austrian seal, and Austria, maybe it's also interesting for you to know, looks back on a diverse museum landscape of almost 800 registered museums, a wide spectrum ranging from art museums, historical, archaeological, natural history, ethnographic museums, to special museums of the cultural history. So the museums are cultural, are the cultural memory and knowledge repositories, whose core task is it to bring these repositories, the collection of course, and the tangible and intangible documents preserved there closer to the general public. You may notice that I mentioned registered museums. The museum's registration in Austria is a necessary process for the application for the quality seal, and also a first evaluation that checks if the so-called applying museum is also acting as a museum, if it owns a significant collection with a specific thematic frame or focus, and can also prove their institutional and financial requirements to enable a long-term management. So the Austrian Museum Quality Seal makes visible the achievement of a quality level in museum work that goes beyond the required minimum registration I just talked before, and offers many advantages. The award of the Austrian Museum Quality Seal is also a public proof that the respective museum takes responsibility for the preservation of cultural heritage, recognizes and acts in accordance with the ethical guidelines for museums of ICOM, and ensures that visitors are offered an outstanding museum experience. So that leads me to the benefits also and advantages of being rewarded with this seal. First of all, we have a strong network. Almost 300 museums throughout Austria carry the museum quality seal and are committed to comprehensive, high quality museum work. As a part of the network, these museums base their work on the ICOM Code of Ethics. This is very important. And the standards are adapted for Austria according to the criteria catalog we were working on, especially for the quality seal. The museums regularly improve their work through professional training and cooperate with museum associations, universities, and other museums. Also, the benefits of this seal are for example, it is a hallmark for a quality museum experience. As further referred to, the museum does become a quality guarantor for a high level of user-friendliness of the exhibition rooms. This means that the visitors from home and abroad can expect, among other things, a clear guidance system on a scientifically sound and comprehensive presentation of the exhibition, in addition to the presentation of the objects. We also another benefit is that subsidies and funding are much more easily accessible to museums who carry the seal. For public authorities, the museum quality seal is proof of the quality of museum work recognized throughout Austria, and thus often is the basis of awarding the subsidies or fundings by the Austrian state. Not all quality seal museums are funded by the states. Many of our communities are based on local associations or unions, and the Austrian Museum Award, as also mentioned in the presentation, is an annual award given to museums with outstanding work, and it can only be awarded to museums who are already carrying the seal. We have also the credibility in sponsorship and loan transaction. This is another advantage. It increases the trust in the respective museum among other sponsors, for example, tourist authorities, foundations, local authorities, or also private companies, as well as among lenders for special exhibitions from national or international museum institutions. Another advantage proof that the collection is sustainable. So the sustainability of the collection, this also result in the increased confidence among potential donors of objects for museums. A museum that has been awarded with the seal meets the requirement of a storage and presentation that's that can be trusted. And last, I want to mention the Austrian Eco label for museums, also established by ICOM Austria. This is also a benefit that you can, that the quality seal is a part of the Austrian Eco label. So this is also the connection to the Green Museum movement. And now I'm shortly going to try to answer how to apply to the seal. We have a new criteria catalog that was published during the Museum Day in 2021, so that every registered museum in Austria can apply for the seal. The guidelines are compiled in this new criteria catalog. And first of all, the jury was very important to develop the further and very also detailed criteria catalog. So all the jury members and I were working on this process of a new criteria catalog. And the first question we had was, what exactly is a museum? And we all know the definition, the museum definition by heart, but it's very important to mention it. It provides the general structure also for our guidelines. And I will not going to read it out loud, but you can see that the structure of the guideline from point 1 to 8 really is the basis is the museum definition, and we created 8 chapters step by step to look closely into the permanent, institutional, and financial basis of museums. Then we are looking at the public accessibility, the social mission. We look at the collection, at the concept of the collection, how the collection is preserved and conservated. Also research is a very important factor. And 7, the mediation, and 8, the exhibition. So what's exactly inside the manual? We have 8 criteria, 8 facts. So we were really focusing also in the manual that this is also working as a basic guideline for museum management at one glance. So this is not only an application manuals, it can also help to work on different concepts. It gives ideas, for example, for how to write a collection concept or a museum concept. It also is a self-evaluation tool, so with a lot of checklists and overviews of topics. The application procedure, we tried really to explain it very, very simple so that everyone can follow and really understand how and why we are asking of specific criteria. It is an online application working through the website of the Museumsgütesiegel or Austrian Seal of Quality. And the submission is already open. With an online form. The application ends with the 31st of March every year and starts with 1st January. And as I said, we have to evaluate every museum every 5 years. And these are two different application forms for a newly museum and for one that wants to extend the quality seal. And we also offered in the manual really ideas and thoughts how to develop further the museum work. And this is filled with a lot of hints and further information, guidelines, and literature tips for the museums. Yes, these are the 8 criteria. Like in German, I'm sorry I hadn't the time to again translate the graphic design, but I would like to end now and with a short, that not only the achievement, but above all the maintenance of the museum standards is connected with a constant process of further developments. So the Austrian Museum Quality Seal is not the goal of a museum development. This is very important, I think, to know, because we see it as the beginning of a process, an ongoing process, and an occasion to go new paths and to continue to think about the concept and the institution of the museum altogether. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation, Ms. Jasmine, and thank you very much for sharing with us about the Austrian Seal of Quality for Museums and also the guidelines for the Austrian museums, right? Well, Ms. Elky, would you like to share your view about the presentation of Ms. Jasmine?
Of course, we are colleagues. The quality sign is a very long and constant project here in Austria. If you have any questions regarding Ms. Jasmine, we'll be happy to help you, to answer you and give you some more information, I guess. She's a well-experienced coordinator for the project now, and we're happy to give whatever you need, or also the regulations they're just in German, but we can help you translate or explain in English, of course. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Elky. Our next presenter is Ms. Tatiana Munoz-Brunels. So she is curator at the Museo de la sorry, I am really bad with these names. I'm really sorry about this. I think Ms. Tatiana will introduce, the names to us. Well, she will be presenting on queer art in Costa Rica and creating new heritage. Let us welcome Ms. Tatiana.
Thanks, Mina, for this introduction. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with this group of international colleagues some of Latin American heritage and topics that are emerging in our cultural area. Since ICOM is a very big family all around the world, we are all talking from very different places. So excuse me if I may sound sleepy or something, because it's very early in the place I am right now. I'm sharing my presentation with you. Okay, so my name is, the pronunciation is Tatiana Munoz-Brunels. I know it can be very difficult to pronounce. Well, I am a board member of the ICOM Costa Rica National Committee. My pronouns are she and her, and it's an honor for me to present here part of my research that has been writing and documenting from scratch a part of the history of Costa Rican art that has remained forgotten and hidden. I mean the LGBTIQ art of a small Central American country that is still building its different artistic identities. So the museum with which I am carrying out this series of investigations and projects was born in 2018 is called the Museum of Identity and Pride. It was born as a response to electoral campaigns with far-right conservative political parties and with a strong homophobic content based on religious arguments. In this context, there were many project possibilities, but why specifically did we opt for a museum? That is something that is asked. So why a museum? We could have done anything else, any kind of cultural invention, but we opt for a museum. So why? To recover and remember the advancement in human rights that LGBTIQ people have achieved, and thus build a more inclusive future for all in the country. To propose a change in museum institutions, because there is history that is not told due to prejudices, fears, and resistance. And to make visible that minorities, stereotyped, limitedly represented, and forgotten otherness, and thereby raise awareness, promote dialogue, and the fight for equal rights. I want to talk to you first about my previous research, which is actually still in progress, which is the writing of a new unofficial history of art in Costa Rica. The first step was to create an archive from which to create a chronology, quantitative and qualitative analysis of how the LGBTIQ topic has been addressed in visual arts exhibitions. As you can imagine, the information was not visible at all, and it has been a process of almost 2 years, recovering the information from many primary sources, not yet exhausted. So I've been working through museums, archives, galleries, newspapers and magazines, catalogs, internet, interviews to artists, curators, collectors, gallerists, checking the curatorial text, photographs, videos, personal files, and documenting private collections. You can see in this table briefly that there are actually a few LGBTIQ themed exhibitions because, well, this is a very small country. We have a very small amount of museums, so it's not weird to find actually small numbers. And as can be seen, there has been a significant increase in the subject in museums and galleries in recent years, with the period prior to 2010 still being the least documented. And these are just preliminary results. So I hope that for the end of this year, we can see the complete investigation. So I'm still tying up to loose ends, and I do not dare to offer definitive numbers yet. But I can anticipate in this moment that there are more than 20 exhibitions that I have been able to locate. But this is a matter for another speech. What I want to say now is that with these preliminary results, we already had enough quantitative and qualitative material to take the next step in writing this new art history. We asked ourselves what was happening in the contemporary Costa Rican art world. So a little detail I would like to stress here is that over 2018, you can see that the amount of exhibitions increases. So it's not a coincidence. I think that it responds to the context that I explained before, the electoral and political context that was lived in this moment in 2018. And that is also the same year that the Museum of Identity and Pride was born. So, which is a museum specialized in LGBTIQ and queer art. So it's not a coincidence, it's a matter of context. Our start project for Pride Month in last year was called Quiero Queer, which can be translated to the English language more or less as I want it queer. It may have not much originality in English, but in Spanish, it is a striking pun when we pronounce it Quiero Queer. We set it out to do an extensive mapping of all artists within the country who were producing LGBTIQ-themed works, which is different from only identifying LGBTIQ artists who work any other topic. So we wanted to map people who were actually working on the topic more than their identity. Sorry, here is my cat. And so what we did was an interinstitutional project that we achieved with the Spanish Cultural Center, the first of other collaborations that we have been doing to build parallel agendas with other institutions in favor of queer art and history. You will be able to see in the next slides the portraits, name, and a work of art of each of the participants, as well as a little as well as a title that synthesizes the themes that each one of them addressed. We did very valuable interviews that were more than a database. We built a first audiovisual archive of the state of contemporary queer art, mapping artists around the country and inviting them to talk about intellectual and emotional issues around their LGBTIQ work. The people interviewed were very diverse in many ways, in their visual languages they used, in their political positions, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, stage of their career, nationality, academic training, ethnicity, among other variables. The archive was created to be publicly accessible, so we decided to make it available to researchers, curators, artists, and the public in the form of a podcast. The aesthetic arrangement and the podcast format turned the interviews into an eye-catching and unprecedented product. The core of the project was the opening of a safe place to comment on emotional, affective, autobiographical topics. This meant that the curators, myself and my colleague, Kellner, brought to the project our knowledge in social sciences, since he's an anthropologist and I am a psychologist, which was my first degree before becoming an art historian. And we both were emphasizing empathy and active listening to very personal issues. Having risked from future oblivion this cross-section of the situation of our artists gave us many more clues to establish a north for our mission and future topics. So some emotional topics that we found in these interviews were the bullying, the shame, and traumatic events that these artists lived among their lives, the importance of the self-love, some family issues of every kind. The concept of community was something that was very different for every one of the participants. The LGBTIQ community is not a concept shared by all of them. something that was shared was also the aesthetics and influences, the diversity of the bodies, difficulties of trans women's lives, homoerotism and masculinities, the lack of lesbian representation in the art sector. And the most important thing that we found was that their art was moved by hate, but it gradually moved to a place of love, pride, and celebration. This last point that I want to stress was a constant in the 16 interviews that we carried out. Apparently, there is a subjective step that has marked the artistic production of all. The passage from hate to love, from fury to celebration, is an important turning point to consider for our mission as a museum. Some of the achievements that we reached with this project was an intergenerational dialogue, because there were different fights in different times to be queer. So there were many different stories according to their ages. Also, this podcast was a place of intellectual and affective expression. It was a place for the creation of the first database of artists whose work refers to the LGBTIQ theme. And that's the importance of the archive and documentation in the very present time. We are writing contemporary art history. Also, there was a rapprochement between artists after the publication of the podcasts. And the curators, me and my colleague, we left our comfort zone by performing tasks for which we were not trained. We are not radio announcers, and so that demanded some skills, new skills from us. We also were able to make a networking with other LGBTIQ museums in Latin America, specifically in Ecuador, Colombia, and Chile. And I believe that a next step after this success of Quiero Queer is a content analysis with qualitative methodologies, such as grounded theory or something, which allows us to deconstruct in more detail the feeling and experiences of our participants. We can see here more of the artists. As you can see, we interview even, for example, a Chinese participant because she lives in Costa Rica. She has a double nationality. So we found that the group that we mapped was very, very diverse. And it was important for a queer museum to find this diversity in ages and in the kind of art that they are making. This is, for example, photo performance. It was not only about painting, which is the most common media found. More achievements that we reached was the expression of taboo topics in sexuality and gender identity, the representation, as I said, of a very diverse group. And something interesting is that we received contact from more artists who were interested in collaborating with the museum on future projects. So we think that the queer art history is going somewhere. And so we hope it will not be forgotten anymore since we are documenting it. The sincerest thanks from each of the artists for having been invited to a safe space free of discrimination. That fact makes us believe that this project was needed, and nobody is talking about this actually in the region of Central America. And this is the beginning of something new. These are many other of the artists. And as a final discussion, I want to briefly bring to the table the concepts of museum, collection, and heritage, which is what actually brings me here. We have many doubts about traditional concepts and broaden their meaning. We think we need to decolonize all these concepts, and so we are trying to be consequent on this, and we are focused on collecting memories, life stories, and feelings more than objects. That is something that we have called counter-collecting, a term coined by myself and my colleague Eunice Baez from the Identity and Pride Museum. That is not an anti-collecting position, because we, of course, agree in terms of having a collection of objects, of artworks that can be tangible. But we say not anti-collecting, but counter-collecting, in the sense of making something that goes in other direction. And so we are placing our bets on the memories and the affections and the biographical content of all this non-written yet art history. We also bet on the virtual museum. We think that museums do not necessarily need walls, but according to some discussions that we held in the last ICOM General Assembly in Kyoto, we believe that museums are polyphonic spaces, and we are giving voices and giving spaces to many other populations. So LGBTIQ people, as a marginalized community, we need to use every possible voice we have. So in terms of heritage, the question would be, what do we want to keep as ours? I always say that I don't keep something just because it was given to me. It doesn't matter if it was given by somebody special or somebody from my ancestors. I need to know why I need or I want to keep this. This need to have a meaning. It's not just tradition just because it is. So why do we want to keep this? And why are we creating this new heritage, which is the story of a community in particular? We think that curating and museums are not politically neutral, as we all know. So we are enhancing a social justice-oriented curating. And we think that not as a group, or maybe not as a community, but the museum is moving something, and it is a reaction, a positive reaction to all these projects and these researches that we are holding. I want finally to invite you to listen Quiero Queer by scanning this QR code. The interviews are, of course, in Spanish, and is a challenge we have for the near future to translate it, to write it, and to make content analysis on this. But maybe it would be interesting for you to have an idea of how we managed to make this project in terms of aesthetics, in terms of sound formatting. So this will take you directly to the podcast. For now, this is all. Thank you so much. Please don't hesitate to contact me, to contact the museum, to visit our social media, and we will be glad to answer any question and to maybe make something together with our colleagues and museums. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation, Ms. Tatiana. And well, thank you very much for introducing the Museums of Identity and Pride, as well as your research. It was quite interesting for us. Well, I would like to request Ms. Elky, like, how do you like, the presentation of Tatiana? Do you have anything that you'd like to share?
Thank you so much, Mina. Thank you so much, Tatiana, for this very, very informative and interesting view of this museum. Lately, there has been an initiative to establish a queer museum in Vienna. So we hope we can join forces in there. So decolonizing and diversity have been like huge topics, I think, in the museum community lately, at least the last 5 years now. We see a lot of change, a lot of museums are taking on tasks that were not the classical museum tasks that were favored before, like the collecting, and we know like the 5 classical tasks. But there's so many possibilities and needs now from the communities and societies that museums have to react on now, and to be integrating spaces, to show diversity in museums, to show different voices, different perspectives. I think it's very important. It's really important that museums also take on difficult issues. We have a time now, I think, where often facts are disputed. So this is also a very big field where museums, as you said, are not neutral, but I think we can uphold values that are really common to the international museum community, like for instance, the international conventions we adhere to, the international laws we adhere. So we see that in the debate about different views, the queer community, but also in times of crisis, like in the Ukraine, where museums are not neutral, but enforcing the international laws the international community has agreed upon. So I think those things are going together in very common ways now, and thank you for the important contribution.
Thank you very much, Ms. Elky. We actually have a question from Safalta Kumari, because we are in schedule right now. So just let me, read the question for Ms. Tatiana. Well, the question is, any reason why 2019 had 7 exhibitions, but 2020 and 2021 didn't? Is that due to COVID or any other reasons?
Yes, I was just trying to share again. Okay, yes. For sure, COVID is a very good reason to say that. And I think that there was in 2019 a big reaction to the electoral context. If I may say something else about that and explain it better, there was a polarization in 2018. The country was divided hardly. Really, it was very sad because the topic that was the fight against political parties was the LGBTIQ topic and the gay marriage. which was approved in 2019. So that fact, which was the polarization of the country among this topic and the legalization of gay marriage, it made an increase of the LGBTQ exhibitions, and then with the COVID, it went down. So I think that those were the two explanations that we can give to that. And thanks for your question.
Thank you very much, Tatiana, for answering. Well, yes, I do think that, partially COVID is like, responsible for so many effects in the museums, right? Well, okay. Well, our next presenter is Miss Safalta Kumari herself. Well, she is an architect at SBL Karachi, Pakistan, and she will be presenting on cultural implications on the temple architecture of Pakistan. Welcome, Miss Safalta.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Like you already introduced me, I would like to say thank you from my giving me this opportunity, and also good afternoon to ICOM Austria and to just a second, yeah. Okay, to ICOM Austria and also to ICOM Family Forum. It has been a great pleasure seeing you all present and having the opportunity to present amongst you all. The difference between my presentation is such that it is not focused on museums. It's rather a little bit focused on the minorities of Pakistan. So starting on, my topic is the cultural implication on temple architecture of Pakistan. And like I had already given my introduction, I am an architect working for HBL, which is a bank. It's kind of interesting working for a bank. And also I graduated from Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture. Some of my awards that I'd won was that I was working for this affordable housing scheme. And it was sponsored by IAP, which is a local body for architects, and it was sponsored by IAI. So it was regarding that. So moving on, this was my brief introduction. Okay, so what we will be discussing, we'll be discussing the background of temple architecture all over the subcontinent. We will be talking about temples in Karachi. We will be talking about the implications of lack of knowledge, that how it affects the changes in rituals, and also the urban forces and other forces that act and create these changes in the temple architecture. And also I will be discussing a temple architecture prototype. Okay. So starting off with, there are two types of temples in the subcontinent region. There is the Shikara and the Vimana. The main, the North Indian temples and the South Indian temples, sorry. So the main difference is Shikara and Vimana. So a Shikara is a pinnacle and Vimana is is like a trapezoid. So the difference is that both of them are on top of the womb chamber where the main deity is, but their form is identified through the places, the region, and the cultural rituals that were followed in that area. So this is a simple mind mapping of how the regions were divided. The red is the Dravidian, where your Vimana is found, and your green is the Nagara, where and Karachi falls under the Nagara style mainly. The simple allowance that you can understand over here is that when accessing a Nagara temple, a North Indian temple, you access the entrance porch, which is called the Mandapa, then the Artha Mandapa, which is a primary congregational space, then comes the secondary deity and the main deity. The main deity is where the Garbhagriha is. So over here, the temples were less complex as compared to the South Indian temples. Mainly why? Because everybody was allowed to pray towards God, whereas in the Dravidian temples, you would have a more complex structure, a more layered structure, and a more dense garbhagriha, or the womb chamber. If anybody is a Marvel fan, this is the main sanctum sanctorum. So not everybody has access to that. So over here in Dravidian temples, you had the priests that were only allowed to pray in those earlier times. So that's why it was more secluded and had a smaller entrance as compared to like you see in the Nagara temples. So only the priests could pray. Now, a little fundamental ideation of how the temple's structure works. This is common for Dravidian and Nagara temples. So you have, it's mostly elongated. And the mandapa is usually in the center, and your access is always from the east. Why? Because they would want the first light of this was from, you would have your first light coming in into the temple. Okay, so these were some of the main elements that the temples have. You have the main axis, you have the garbhagriha, you have the shikhara or the vimana on top of the garbhagriha that will be highlighted. You know, its height is almost the twice of the garbhagriha. Why? So that it can be identified from far off distances. Then the axis, and the mandapa is right after the garbhagriha where your offerings are done, and then you have the presence of open spaces. Now, coming on to the temples in Karachi. So, talking about the temples in Karachi, there are about 3 lakh Hindus in Karachi itself, and out of which we have 50 temples, which are namely temples. After the partition, we had a lot of people migrating from Karachi, so a lot of them are not under use. Some are still under use, and 3 of which are the most popular ones and the ones that can cater to about 5,000 people at one time. So also after the partition, and because of the fact that there were not many temples that could be utilized, most of these temples started going under expansion. So while going under expansion, they were done in a rapid form in trying to replicate the existing temples, or trying to just occupy space so that the rituals can be performed and you can accommodate those so many numbers of people. In doing so, we'll talk about these 3 precedences. In doing so, you have these 3 main temples: the Shiva temple, the Hanuman temple, and Lakshmi temple. These are the 3 temples that house these masses. Okay. Going to the Shiva temple, this is an interesting cave temple. And you have the garbhagriha at the lowest level, and your entrance at the highest level due to the cave. Also, it's a very popular temple in Karachi, because the people have the belief that Shiva resided in this temple at one time, and they believe that the destruction will begin from this end. Moving on, like I said, your entrance comes from the start, from the highest point, and your access comes down to this mandapa, and then you go down towards the womb chamber. While going towards it, you have one deity here, and the main deity on the lowest level. Now this earlier, this is the current access. Earlier, you had your access coming in from here, and that incorporated the fact that you would look at this the secondary deity and then go towards the main. Over here, you're more focused on the mandapa area from which your tertiary activities are concerned from. In this case, what happens is that during big festivals, like for example Shivratri or Diwali, you have a huge gathering over here. So the person who's coming in for the main deity has to go through that amount of rush and cannot access the main deity. Like he said, you can see the different processions that happen over here. This is where that main area that I was talking about. So when all the processions over here, so you cannot access the cave temple. Then moving on to the second example, Hanuman temple. Now this is a very beautiful temple and it is about 1500 years old. And what is happening right now is that they're trying to replicate exactly how its shikara is. So now you have this confusion where the sanctum sanctorum is, the womb chamber. So it's basically due to after the partition, there was lack of knowledge in our people. They wanted to expand rapidly rather than understanding that usually architects are not involved. Usually the people are doing it on their own. So understanding from different point of view, they just try to expand. So it creates that confusion in terms of the temple architecture that is there, and also in terms of movement. So like I had mentioned, there was a very clear axis as to going towards the sanctum. Whereas now, because of the expansions, like you said, this is all expansion. These are all expansion and tertiary activities. And this is the sanctum sanctorum and the mandapa. So your axis from the main has shifted towards the right. So the first thing that you notice is not the sanctum anymore. Like I said, okay. So you see when you're accessing, it's not going in that processional form where you see and access secondary deities and then the main deity. Over here, the thing is guided in a very mismannered. So you have that, and these are some images of the rightmost is the Garbhagriha, and this is the entrance. It's the first image is the entrance. So you don't see the shikara, the pinnacle, or the womb chamber. Now this is also another populous temple, the Lakshmi temple. The interesting thing about that happened with this one is similar. The axis from the front has been cornered off. You have the sponge coming up where you have different activities, people living in the priest's house, shops, and other activities. So when you're entering, you enter like this. So again, the change in ritual is active. So you that whole journey from profane to sacred is it's compromised. These are some of the, again, that huge gate that is going towards that, and you barely see the shikara. And this is an area at that time where the plays are happening. This was in the middle of the session. Okay, another interesting thing that is happening right now is that we are in need of new temples, and because of urban forces, we don't have a lot of areas where you can create new temples. So temples are being erupted in these small residential plots, and obviously because it's in residential, their procession and everything is compromised because the spaces are small. They have to follow a certain outlook and everything else. So over here, your axis is far off from the womb chamber, you do see this secondary deity, but there's always a secondary axis. So nothing is guiding them to go through this area or this way. There's no guidance in terms of architectural spaces. Like I said, fourth is where the womb chamber is, but also again you have that because it's in residential plot, it's missing the shikara, the pinnacle, the icon. These are how they did again. So because you have your food, the kitchen over here, you have a lot of rush coming in over here, so it creates an obstacle for a new person coming in or a person leaving without having to go through that. Okay, so my take on this change in rituals and how the rituals are now performed, well, not they're forced to be performed in a certain manner due to architectural forces and urban forces, is that we cannot control a lot of things, but we can look at how the books and what they wanted to teach us. So in the previous temple architecture, all the ornamentations used to have these before people could read, as even the earliest times, the priests were the only ones who were the keeper of the books. So they would put ornamentation on the temples, and that would explain the life cycle of the of a particular god or some understanding of the books. So one thing that I wanted to explain was the fourfold philosophy that Hindu temple architecture has. Is the moksha, kama, artha, and dharma. This is in general the narrative that Hindus follow. So I will explain what each means through these spaces. Okay, so I had the opportunity to work on this 7-acre plot. Now, obviously, this is just a model example, because, like I explained, in terms of temples, you don't have that much of space anymore because we live in an urban city. It's very dense. You barely have space anymore. So what you do over here, you have these processions coming in, and the way I have layered these spaces is that your profane to sacred journey is not interrupted by different processions going on in the middle. I will come back to this. So explaining the fourfold philosophy, moksha. Moksha is where we are expecting the Garbhagriha to be, is where your freedom from bondages and life cycles is achieved. Kama is where your shikara is, understanding how to control desire and self-actualization and reach self-actualization. Artha is where the walls and entrance port is. It is to understand the meaning and the monetary wealth and knowledge of the world. And dharma is to attain sustenance, observance of the critical. Sorry, I cannot read this. Observance of dharma is critical to the growth of both and individual and in society. So in terms of learning, this is how we grow as a society. And the whole reason of creating this prototype was that our minority is ever growing. And because of these residential temples, the fear is growing as such, while our people are becoming more accepting. So if our temple is such that it is there and it is highlighted, it gives the confidence back to the bead. So this was a simple sectional study of how the temple has that pinnacle coming back. But in our term, now that because we don't have that much ornamentation anymore, we work with these cones that bring in the light at different times of the day, and it's lit throughout the day. And you have these spaces for your like Ram Leela and different dramas that we do have, and the ghat. So basically, the ghat is conjoined with the stage for the drama, so that it can come together, and it's floating on top of water. And even though temple is floating on water to show that sanctity, that purity. This is the procession going towards the temple. And another, this is where the third dharma is at, sort of. Okay, now going back to the temple. Okay, so you when you come in, you have these arches that are 9 arches. 9 arches, basically, that is the it's a square number. For temple architecture, the number, any square number is very pure and used. So you have these 9 arches through which you enter this court, and the first thing you see is the Hanuman deity that's there. It's usually the protector of the temple. And over here is this tree, which is a sacred tree that we have. And you have the two deities, which are female goddesses, which have these Navratri. So around this area is where you have the Navratri processions and the dances and everything, like I had showed in one of the views. Okay, going forward is this small area through which you go towards the temple. Now, this is because you have you're forced to go and interact with the temple architecture, and you understand that you're moving away from all those societal things. Like, for example, you already have the social interaction over here and a social interaction over here. That's where you play your Navratri and all that. And this is something that is a little more personal, going towards the tent. So moving over here is where you go towards the sanctum. And also, while coming back, you go out from here, so that if a procession is going forward, you do not get interrupted by that. And also, some of it is given away, not given away, given back to the community. And some of over here is where these step terraces is given back to the community, so that they're forced to interact with the minority architecture. The majority and other minorities are forced to interact. And this is one thing I forgot to mention, is that it is near sea view. So over here you have a lot of people coming in to the beach. So they're forced to interact in terms of visual, and you will have a kitchen over here that caters to these people. So these people have a visual access to it, a physical access is contained towards this area, but they do not come in, so that the fear, if people have that fear, the minority still do and will continue to do so for a little time, that can be contained. This is where I was talking about. This is where the Navratri happens, and your goddesses are there, and the people are praying towards them. and this is where the procession happened. And going towards the temple sanctum. So yeah, this was my understanding of how we can give back to the minority and make a statement that we're here to stay, and you know, make the majorities understand our religion and create a dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Safalta, for this interesting presentation. Well, Ms. Elky, would you like to share your thoughts about this presentation?
Yes, just very briefly. Thank you, Safalta, for this very, very informative lecture, giving for me, completely new perspective on the sacred architecture concepts of those temples in Karachi. Is very interesting, as we in the West here, of course, are not very familiar with those concepts. And it was very interesting for me to hear the organization of those temples and how they work, and how those perspectives also have changed. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Elky and Ms. Safalta. Well, you know, to make this short, we have a quick question from Shivani Aditya Banerjee. Well, she's a museologist from India and a part of member of ICOM India. And her question is that, well, she has observed the temples in the salt trading area. They carry a distinct feature. So she would like you to shed some lights about it. So if it's brief, could you please share about this question?
Yeah, okay. So she's talking about the difference between the north and the south, or just the south and the variant in the south?
Okay, the question was that she has observed the temples in the salt trading area. So she's asking,
trading area? I'm sorry.
Salt range area.
Okay.
All right. So do they carry a distinct feature?
I am not very aware of that, but what I learned while researching was that the main difference came from the fact that the kings, like for example in the southern region, the kings were more involved. And if they're talking about the salt area, is that because they had a certain topography that they had to work with. So the change usually come. What I had shown was an overall understanding, but obviously, like for example, if you see those elephant caves, they're very different than any other. So it's basically about topography.
Well, thank you very much, Safalta, for the answer. If you want to add anything to this question, maybe at the end of our session, you can add those anything that you would like to see. Well, our final presenter is Miss Angel Gonzalez Luna. She is a virtual artist and owner of Luna Art Galleria in Philippines. And today she will be presenting on Pearls of Orient, Philippines, with reference to art, culture, and heritage. Well, welcome, Luna. Sorry, welcome, Angel.
Hi, can you hear me?
All right, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Hello. Thank you so much for having me here. Actually, I don't have any experiences in museums, so I'm really glad to hear everything that you said from the start. I mean, I'm glad to learn about I mean, the ethics about museum, because I'm gonna start working at the museum soon. So thank you so much for sharing, and I'm glad that I'm here today. So I think there are some things that I just want to share as a visual artist and a gallery owner in the Philippines, and also I would like to plug in that I'm the visual art gallery manager of the ICOM Family Forum, and I'm glad that I hear everything that you presented a while ago. So I have an idea on how to correlate the visual gallery to the museums. So there you go. So my presentation is about Philippines art, culture, and heritage. Okay, so the next slide. So I'm just gonna give you a brief history of the Philippines. Actually, I'm just gonna tour you in our country. So my today's topic is about Philippines, the timeline of the art history, culture, heritage sites, and why visit Philippines. So the next is that, next slide, please. Yeah, so if you don't know history, then you don't know anything. So the next slide is that this is the Philippines art, culture, heritage timeline. So I'm discussing Philippines art history. So I'm just gonna focus on the basics, and I'm just gonna simplify events. So I'm just gonna put everything in a simple presentation. So this is the timeline of our art history. So we have Spanish colonial, American colonial, Japanese colonial, post-war, and contemporary. So we've been in an influence of all these countries in the history. So I'm gonna go through one by one. So in the Spanish colonial thing between 1545 to 1896, the Spaniards gave us a huge impact. So the Spaniard came in the Philippines, and it has been the conversion of Catholicism in the entire country. So they ruled for the first 100 years and had command in the languages priests, and friars had the most power in the government. So we've been in the Spanish colonial timeline for 100 years. So the next is that after the Spaniards, Americans come in, and the American colonization lasted for 48 years. So they brought architecture and theater arts. Theater arts focus was about freedom. So the next slide is that, so after the American, it's the Japanese. So the Japanese brought tragedy and suffering in our country and are allowed to make paintings and songs, but under approval of Japanese government. Art should portray Japan as the great one. Aesthetic about wars, destruction, and normal lives of the Filipinos are the only themes allowed during that time in the art sector. So after the Japanese is so in the post-war, after all of the war, Philippines gained independence. This era is called recovering era. Filipino literature was given a break. This was the time that the Filipinos learned to express themselves more confidently and proudly. So art has been sorry. I think we can go on to the next slide.
All right, sorry. A few minutes, please.
I think we skipped some part for the contemporary. So after the post-art, there's a contemporary time. So there's, yeah. So I missed the contemporary part. So after the post-art, there's this contemporary arts that has been in the Philippines. So here are some traditional arts in the Philippines. It's weaving. We have weaving in South Cotabato. It's in Tivoli, and we called it the people there has been having this culture of weaving, and one of the traditional arts again is the carving, and there you go is the Buddha that they found, and there's pottery and folk architectures in the Philippines. So yeah, I go to the next slide. So there. So we have the non-traditional arts in the Philippines. It's dance. We have folk dances. We have paintings. That's the famous painting here in the Philippines. It's a painting of Juan Luna, the Spolarium. We have also sculptures here in the Philippines. It's a Serizal in Luneta Park, and also the fashion designing. So the next slide. So we have also festivals here in the Philippines. We have Panagbenga Festival. It's a flower festival here that we celebrate during February. And there's this Ati-Atihan Festival that we celebrate during January. And the Sinulog Festival in Cebu, where they parade and have this beautiful handmade dresses. And also we have the Pahiyas Festival during the May. Okay, so in the next slide, so I'm gonna share to you some of the World Heritage Sites in the Philippines that 9 must visit UNESCO sites. So the next slide. Okay, so one of the heritage sites here in the Philippines is a Puerto Princesa Subterranean River National Park, where you can go kilometers after kilometers of the river under the cave. So the next is, okay, so we have the rice terraces of the Philippines in the farthest north, and the Tubata Reefs National Park in Sulu Sea, where you can see a lot of species of in the ocean. Okay. The next is the historic city of Vigan, where you can see old houses and old architectures here in the Philippines. And the next is the San Agustin Church in Intramuros, Manila. So since we have been colonized by the Spaniards for a long time, so we have a lot of churches here. So one of that is San Agustin Church in Intramuros, Manila. The next is the Fuay Church in Ilocos Norte. And also the next one, it's Mount Himigutan. It's where you can see the Aliwagwag Falls and also the forest there. The next is the Migao Church in Iloilo. I think that's the 9 sites. Or yeah, I have the last slides. The next is the Santa Maria Church of Ilocos. So that's the 9 heritage sites that you can visit in the Philippines. So why visit the Philippines? Because it's more fun in the Philippines, aside from how I presented it, because I'm just a little bit nervous. So thank you so much. I hope that I imparted some things about our art, culture, and heritage, though I haven't discussed it in details because it's so much deeper, and I haven't thought of in detail discussion of the things that I need to discuss in this presentation. So I have gone through just the basic of our country.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Angel, because we actually got very brief introduction of Philippines. Well, let me invite Miss Elky to share her views with us.
Thank you, Angel. That was very, very interesting, this contemporary and historic perspective on the Philippines. It's, as Tatiana mentioned in her post in the chat, it's interesting to see the influences of the colonial past and the different cultural influences we see in the country. So thank you very much for sharing. Thanks a lot.
Okay. So, well, all the presentations are complete. Let me see, I think there is. All right. So all the presentations, that were set for today's formal session are complete. And now we are in the question and answering session. So we have one more question to Ms. Safalta from Aditya Banerjee. So the question is, the L-shaped design have kept cardinal points in your mind, and how to map them, since Hindu temple architecture is based on flat ground?
Like I had said, the L-shaped design, you're talking about the existing ones?
Aditya, if you are there, please ask your question.
The design that you showed, it is L-shaped. So how do you plan the cardinal points of a temple?
No, that is the axis, that is the L-shape. The actual, let me show you. The actual temple is rectangular.
So still, like, how do you map the cardinal points?
It is facing the cardinal points. It's the east to west axis, so that your east is where your first rays of lights of the day come in, and west is where your setting sun is. So it is actually towards east and west.
Okay.
It is towards the cardinal points.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the question, Aditya, and thank you very much, Safalta, for answering this question. Well, we are at the question and answer session. So if anybody has a question for our speakers, then please raise your hand and ask your question, if you have any. Okay, seems like nobody has any questions. It's a very, very successful presentation, because we don't have any question. Well, let me invite Ms. Elky to, to give us her thoughts about today's presentation before we wrap up the whole session. All right.
Thank you again, everybody, for those fantastic and very interesting presentations. It was a pleasure listening to you. I think for me, it was a very new perspective, many new inputs, and I think this is the goal of a series of lectures like that, to get many different views and international exchange. So thank you so much for participating in that. It was an honor to being able to share that, and I wish you all the best, and I hope we see each other again at meetings like that. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, tomorrow we have another session, so we do hope that we see all our participants from today's session. Yes, Javed, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir, you are here. We can hear you. Javed, sir.
Yeah. Just I wanted to thank Elky for today and the speakers. They had excellent presentation. I couldn't, very much listen to the few speakers, but definitely I will see the recording too. So it's excellent. It's all excellent, and it's because of Elky, because she is remain here and she is encouraging these young speakers. So I would say thank you to Elky, and let's see what's tomorrow come up with the sessions, and then definitely we have several other conferences, regular conferences sessions. So this is session 4 is the last session. So of group 6, then we have a group 7 next month, and then we have a group 8 in May. So I think that lots of many colleagues has helped us, and we together have been able to gather youngsters, and I would say that experts like Elky, Kellner, and Martina Lemme, and so on. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. And let's see what's come up tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Javed sir. Well, we are actually on the schedule and almost finished with all the questions and queries. So let me end the session of today's. And please be reminded that we have another formal session tomorrow, that is March 16th, 2022. And we seriously hope to see you all tomorrow. Well, on behalf of ICOM Austria and ICOM Family Forum, I would like to extend our sincere gratitude to our honorable session leader and keynote speaker, Ms. Elky Kellner, and all our presenters, Ms. Jasmine Offner, Ms. Tatiana Munoz, Ms. Safalta Kumari, and Ms. Angel Gonzalez Luna. So besides them, this program would not have been successful without our attendees. So my sincere thanks to Ms. Lamia Ferzi. She was here, she was the General Secretary of ICOM Arab. She left earlier, even though. So the next is our Professor Dr. Dhan Kumar, Vice President of ICOM Nepal. Of course, Sir Mohammad Akhtar Javed, board member of ICOM ASPAC, Sir Imran Sumru, visual artist from Pakistan, Ms. Ozma Bhatti, artist from Pakistan, Ms. Shivani Aditya Banerjee, museologist and member of ICOM India National Committee, and Sir Aditya Banerjee, archaeologist and member of ICOM India National Committee. We also had another guest, Rajvansh Kodwani. We don't have a lot of information about him. Anyway, thank you very much to all our participants for being here and interacting, and also, sharing your thoughts as well as questions. Well, with these closing remarks, all right, I would like to say goodbye to you all and wish you all good day and good evening. All right.
Okay. Bye. I love you all.